SCP-096. Imagine being so insecure about your own face that you'd swim to the bottom of the ocean just to get rid of the one guy who saw it. And I know what you're thinking. Why are we feeling bad for one skinny dude whose life goal is to turn people into closed casket funerals? Fair question. But trust me, the actual file is way sadder than the memes. Obviously, we all know this one as the Shy Guy, which is a very cute name for a 9-foot malnourished humanoid with 5-foot arms and a jaw that unhinges to 4 times normal. But let's not judge here, since that might be the very reason he comes for us. You see, most of the time, 096 does absolutely nothing. It doesn't hunt or scheme. Hell, it doesn't even seem particularly intelligent. It just paces around its cell, minding its own business. Then somebody sees its face, and the instant it happens, 096 completely falls apart. We're talking screaming, sobbing, a full 1 to 2 minute breakdown on the floor. And if you look close enough, you see me crying next to him because you aren't subscribed yet. Anyway, only after this does it run, because now it has to reach whoever saw it. Doesn't matter if you're on the moon, hiding in Area 51, or front row at a Pitbull concert. Mr. Worldwide can't help you now. But here's the detail that actually wrecks me. The Foundation once aimed a camera at it that develops a photo of whatever the subject most wants. They snapped 096 from behind and waited. What came back wasn't freedom, revenge, or escape. It was its cell, completely empty. Its deepest wish wasn't to get out. It was to be left alone. Honestly, relatable. SCP-2295? You know that one teddy bear that likes to build more teddy bears out of human ears, teeth, and skin? I know, the only tragic thing about that is that he didn't build more. But anyway, somewhere out there, there is one teddy bear that never hurt a single soul, and somehow still ended up with one of the saddest files in the Foundation database. You see, SCP-2295 is just a normal patchwork teddy bear, the exact kind of toy you'd trust around a child. And unlike most SCPs, that's actually a good idea, because whenever someone nearby is dying, the bear quietly comes to life. It pulls a needle, thread, and scissors out of its own mouth, and starts sewing replacement organs out of whatever scraps of cloth are lying around. And if there's nothing to work with, it just rips the stuffing out of its own body, which slowly grows back. So yeah, it'll literally tear itself apart to fix a stranger. And somehow it works, like better than expected when your brand new lung is technically a throw pillow. Oh, and if more than one person is dying at once, it always saves the youngest first, like every single time. Until the one time it couldn't, because one day they put it in a room with a little boy whose brain was bleeding out. And for the first time, the bear froze. It grabbed its needle. It grabbed its thread. It paced in a circle looking for some way anyway to stitch a brain back together. And slowly realized there wasn't one. So instead of building an organ, it gave the boy a chocolate bar, wrapped its little arms around his leg and cried, actual tears leaking out of its button eye. So yeah, the Foundation's best surgeon, now reduced to a hug and some candy because that was all it had left to give. SCP-1762. Somewhere out there, there's a butt-ass naked Santa Claus stalking families and occasionally killing children. Yeah, tragic, whatever. But nobody talks about the dragons that died because humanity stopped believing in them. You see, SCP-1762 was a silver cardboard box with "Here be dragons" written on the lid. Every so often, it would open, and out would come tiny paper dragons. Sometimes hundreds of them. They'd glide through the air, weave between researchers, play with pens, and generally behave like the most wholesome creatures the Foundation had ever contained. After a couple of hours, they'd fly home into the box. The lid would shut, and a handwritten note would appear on top. The notes came from a place known only as Fantasy. At first, they were cheerful. Fantasy says hello, and Fantasy hopes you're happy. But eventually, the messages started changing. Fantasy asks us to restore the belief, or Fantasy is frightened. And every time the box opened, fewer dragons came out. Some couldn't fly anymore. Some arrived crumpled and burned. Then one day, a red dragon crawled out instead of flying. Its wings were torn apart. Its paper body was blackened with scorch marks. And when it finally unfolded itself, researchers found a single word written inside: war. After that came ashes, dead paper dragons, and messages about entire species disappearing. Then one final note arrived. Fantasy is dead. The surviving dragons were sealing the entrance, so whatever destroyed their world couldn't reach ours. And when the box finally closed for the last time, the writing on the lid changed. "Here be dragons" became "Here were dragons." So yeah, to whoever is responsible for this shit, you will be hearing from me. SCP-6670. You ever become so attached to your childhood home that you literally become the house? No? Me neither. But it looks like there's someone who did. You see, before she was part of the floor plan, she was Gemma, a girl who stood out for all the wrong reasons. By 2, she towered over kids twice her age, and she wasn't slowing down. One afternoon, Gemma crawled into a hole in the wall, where she unfortunately got stuck. And then she kept growing. When her mother couldn't pull her out, she did the obvious thing any responsible parent would do. She hid her in the walls. So, Gemma became part of the house. Her spine bent with the beams, her body expanding until she outgrew her room in the worst way possible. So yeah, go big or go home. Guess she did both. Her mom fed her through cracks, sang happy birthdays into the walls, and made tapes of a voice that shifted from, "Mommy, watch me," to, "Mommy, it hurts," until finally, just begging for food. By the early 2000s, the house itself was groaning, splitting apart. The last recordings are awful. The ceiling caving, bones breaking, and Gemma screaming as she crashes through the rooms. Her mother runs in, promising to catch her, but she's never seen again. Today, SCP-6670 still sleeps inside that rotting house. But in 2005, it stirred. A huge, deformed head pushed out the doorway, and in a little girl's voice, it whispered, "Mama, I'm so sorry," with a piece of hair still stuck between her teeth. SCP-1192. Somewhere out there, a bird is committing identity theft against a 7-year-old boy, which would be hilarious if the bird didn't spend most of its time writing, "I want my mom." At first glance, SCP-1192 looks like a scruffy little cockatoo, barely able to fly even though every exam says it's completely healthy. It was found trailing around a Foundation agent who was working undercover as a cop. Apparently, the bird saw a police uniform and figured that's a grown-up who helps lost kids. Then someone handed it a pencil. Not entirely sure what they expected a bird to do with it. Build a nest? Sign a mortgage? But anyway, what he did instead was write, "Who are you?" When they asked who it was, it wrote, "Timmy," then, "Where am I?" And then the line it kept coming back to, "I want to go home." So they asked where home was, and the bird spelled out a full street address in Montana. Agents drove out and found a completely ordinary family, a mom, a dad, and their 7-year-old son. His name was Timothy, and he was doing perfectly fine with zero clue that a parrot 2 states away was stealing his identity. And that's where the mystery begins. Because if Timothy is safe at home, then why does this bird think it's him? Unfortunately, nobody ever found an answer. So now, the cockatoo spent its days drawing race cars, airplanes, monsters, and pictures of families. Researchers later found pages covered with the words "mom" and "home" written over and over again. But the Foundation never figured out what happened. All they knew was that somewhere inside that aviary sat a confused little bird that couldn't stop asking one heartbreaking question. Why am I a bird? SCP-053. What if the most dangerous thing about a little girl wasn't what she did to people, but what people did to her? At first, SCP-053 looks like an ordinary 3-year-old girl. She speaks, she plays. She's basically the kind of kid who should be surrounded by crayons, toys, and adults pretending her drawings are excellent. Instead, her containment procedures read like she's radioactive. No eye contact, no physical contact, no sharp objects, no firearms. One person maximum in the room, and only for 10 minutes. And here's why. You see, any human over the age of 3 who spends too long near her becomes irrational, paranoid, and kind of homicidal. Oh, and the aggression focuses almost entirely on her. So yeah, they become convinced this child has to die. Then, if they actually hurt her, she regenerates almost instantly, while the attacker dies seconds later from a heart attack or seizure. But the worst part is that she doesn't seem to understand why this happens. From her perspective, she doesn't do anything. She just exists. Adults come in, they get scared. And when they try to kill her, they die until she's alone again. There's one strange comfort, though. For some reason, SCP-682, yes, that goofy croc with anger issues and a face only a termination log could love, is not affected the same way. When 682 walked in, it got weirdly shy and laid its head on the floor. So she crept out, patted it, brought it her toys, drew on its armor plating with crayons, and hugged its enormous head. And he just let her, being calm the whole time. So yeah, the little girl everyone wants to kill found her only friend in a giant reptile that wants to kill everyone. Talk about irony, huh? SCP-5392. Y'all remember Phineas and Ferb? This is him now. Feel old yet? Except instead of building roller coasters, this dude built a spaceship in his garage. You see, at 9:50 in the morning, a Foundation satellite detected an object moving faster than light. It came from Othello, Washington, launched from the garage of a man named Albert Maple. I'm serious. It didn't come from NASA or a government lab. It came from an actual backyard. You see, Albert was a 60-year-old auto mechanic described as an enthusiastic hermit, and apparently the kind of man who thought rocket science just meant science, with a rocket. So obviously, that's what he built. Specifically, a faster-than-light spacecraft called the Tachyon Express. Then, because every genius needs an audience, he live-streamed the launch to a grand total of 36 viewers. He just wanted NASA to notice and to show the world we could reach Mars in 12 minutes instead of 12 years. The Foundation, posing as NASA, actually applauded him, and the man was, fittingly, over the moon. For one shining hour, a lonely mechanic was the most important person alive. But then the world noticed. Governments wanted the engine, billionaires wanted the patents, and militaries wanted the weapon. Hell, somebody even fired a missile at his ass. And that's when Albert, realized what he'd actually built. Not faster-than-light travel, but faster-than-light war. So in the end, Albert made the only decision he thought would stop humanity from tearing itself apart. He pointed the Tachyon Express straight at the sun, just before launching himself into space. He quietly said his final words, "Fuck your vastness. I existed." SCP-5732. Meet Rory, a 20-year-old whose body purified any water that touched her. Every impurity, gone. Drop her in a lake and she'd clean about 1,500 liters before passing out. So she's basically a walking miracle for a thirsty planet, right up until the Foundation repaid all that cleaning by doing her absolutely dirty. You see, she discovered this ability at a party when she jumped into a friend's swimming pool and immediately lost consciousness. From there, things started flowing downhill. She woke up in a hospital, and before she even understood what was happening, the Foundation had already extracted her and told her family she died during emergency surgery. And the bleak part is that nobody's memory even needed wiping. The lie just worked, and everyone she loved went home to grieve a girl who was still very much breathing in a cell. And it gets worse because her anomaly damaged her too. It conflicted with her immune system and organs, so even normal water could hurt her if it wasn't distilled. Her showers, drinks, and medical care all had to be controlled. So yes, she's basically the only person in history who could lose a fight against tap water. Anyway, she lived about a year in containment before she went out with a splash. Meaning, she died in her sleep. So yeah, she spent her life cleaning water. This story, though, still leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And that's the list of most tragic SCPs that no one asked for. Anyway, sorry for ruining your day. But hey, if this emotional damage was at least mildly entertaining, consider subscribing.